Good evening, all of you. It's a bit of a tricky thing to be listening to all these good speeches, and I almost forgot that I have come here to speak. And I have to rethink about the whole thing, and partly that's the curse of listening intensely all good speeches here. So, my name is Krish, Sankaran. I moved here a bit over 8-9 months ago from Switzerland. So when I told my Swiss colleagues that I'm planning to move to Finland, they didn't understand why would one do that, especially when it is kind of a suicide mission on 3 levels. 3 times less money, 3 times more taxes, and then 3 times less sunshine. And that's the last part that's more painful. But when I tried to convince my family, saying that there is only 3-4 months of no sunlight, but then it really ended up being a little bit better. But actually, it's the whole process of moving here. So my talk actually is a bit about the entire journey, what I have been going through in the whole process of moving here, or the whole process of setting up the activities, and also to look into the challenges one faces as a person, as an individual, as an organization, and what are the excuses what we keep giving to ourselves, to who we are as a person, or what we are going to do with certain things, or organization also go through this kind of phases, and also the pathway to transformation. So that's the whole idea of it. A few weeks ago, I wrote an article. Well, I didn't write it in Finnish, so the translation is totally up to the translator's fault. But the English one was basically talking about a kind of a story, anecdote that I had as a child. So let me explain the story a little bit so that you know. So I grew up in a small little town with roughly the size of Vaasa. And every year there used to be a carnival where we used to have some fancy stuffs coming. So one of the things that happened in that particular year, I was 8 or 9 years old at the time, was everybody was talking about that particular elephant that comes to that show. We already knew about it because that elephant, let's say hypothetically Vaasa, has been to at least another 5-6 different cities, and it has done all kind of magics, So you hear it from your friends, family. Oh, Vaasa is able to do that. Vaasa is able to do this. I was already, dreaming about Vaasa. But then something of a habit in my family that is, you don't go on the first day, first show. You wait for 3 days, and then you hear what the story is about, whether you're worth going or not, and then you decide to go. That's the kind of a soft killer my father used to give me. I accepted that suspense, so I waited for 3-4 days. So the 4th day, I'm going to see Vaasa. All of a sudden, everybody's shouting that Vaasa, Vaasa, and then Vaasa is coming on stage, and Vaasa is doing all kind of gimmicks, standing on one leg, standing on a ball, doing all this kind of things. I was fascinated. It was really good. I didn't expect an elephant to stand on this, that, doing everything, And at the same time, I was also seeing a guy with a kind of a stick next to Vaasa doing that. Hey, Vaasa, do this, do this. But Vaasa is really doing it, But then the show got finished. I was still in the dream about Vaasa, and I was coming back with my father in the cycle. So my father was asking, so how was the show? I said, it's great. Vaasa was superb. But then he asked me, why did Vaasa do that? I didn't expect that question to be a question to be answered. It was good, that's all, right? But then when he asked me the question just for the sake of answering it, I said, well, Vaasa did it because it's such a great elephant, It knows what to do, and it just picks it up. My father said, no, maybe not. There are hundreds of other elephants also in the world. Why would this elephant be doing that in that particular circus? Then I said, okay, maybe because of the man next to it, with the stick. Maybe Vaasa was really worried about the consequences of not doing it, Well, that's a pragmatic answer to the question, right? But then he stopped the bicycle and he said, maybe not. And he looked into my eyes and he said, you know why Vaasa is able to do that? Because Vaasa doesn't know what it is capable of really doing. And it just accepts the limitations, constraints, compliances, so on and so forth. If that bloody elephant knows what it is truly capable of doing it, you are in there for a different kind of circus. Won't you agree? Right? Would that be the elephant standing on the ball or the person with the stick, right? So this particular story really, really resonated with me in all my decisions, what we were doing as a child, then later on as a teenager in the college, and then when I moved to Germany, when I was 15, 16, and then every pathway, I was always asking the question about what is that we are doing. Because this particular elephant, what is there, is a kind of a metaphor, what I wanted to talk about here. As an individual, who we are, as an institution, as an organization, as a city, as a country, right? And when we accept that possibilities, we also understand that we are basing those possibilities based on certain assumptions, based on certain conditions and constraints, and with that comes also compliances. And that is the exact theme of this particular TED Talk, redefining possibilities, right? So if we ask the question, what are those possibilities, then comes the question of the reasoning and excuses what we give to ourselves. Excuses at the end of the day are just repositioning your assumptions in different ways, you know. I'm able to do this, I'm not able to do that because of this reason, that reason, so on and so forth. So that's the most important thing I wanted to leave with this image of the story. And then I wanted to go into the path of why would certain people choose to accept certain possibilities or constraint as it is. Because status quo is one of the easiest things to accept. How many of you had the possibilities of going and asking for certain services in public offices? You know, no, it can't be done. That's the easiest answer they can give you, right? They can say, no, it's not possible. No, it's not done this way. We have been doing this like this forever, and that's what we have been doing, so we should do the same thing again. So the status quo is actually a kind of a comforting factor for certain people, but at the same time, it is not enough of a frustration for certain people. Because change happens when the frustration becomes more than the status quo. But how do you create that frustration more and more so that change can really happen, right? When I was a child, my father was asking me, oftentimes he was a nuclear scientist working for one of the biggest nuclear establishment in India. So he asked me a question, we all climb ladders, and companies are now filled with ladders. And they have reinvented new types of titles. Today you are this, tomorrow you are senior of that. Tomorrow you are senior of that, right? And those titles have been created to keep people climbing the ladder. We all climb ladders, but he told me one thing after the other. Today you are a junior staff, tomorrow you are a manager, tomorrow, day after tomorrow you are the senior manager. One day you are on the topmost rung of the ladder, and then you realize, damn God, this ladder is on the wrong wall. I ended up climbing this whole ladder all my life, and some of them stick there because of social pressure, because of family situations, because of many reasons they get stuck. You might have heard the story, Lonely at the Top. It happens often. Having worked with the World Economic Forum, I had the privilege of working with almost top CEOs of many of the energy and infrastructure companies. I can tell you, there's a lot of people, not every one of them, but a lot of them have that syndrome, lonely at the top. It's not easy to come down. So one of the best advices I got when I was a teenager is to get rid of the ladder. Sometimes your ladder is not climbing up. Maybe it's horizontal, Maybe the ladder need not be this one or that one. It could be something that you can define for yourself. So it's important to know this, because these are the excuses what we give. And organizationally, individually, it is important for us to understand that it is important for the change to happen, but it's also important to understand that the ladder might also be a barrier. This thing actually has never been so strong as a point in my mind. After I came to Finland, I started noticing this quite a lot. If you're in a certain country, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The grandiose your failure is, the highest position of that country you can get, right? If you make the biggest billionaire loss, you become the president of that country, right? But imagine, in Finland, if you're a failure, what will happen to you? As an individual, what is going to be your future? In Switzerland also, for example, if you are bankrupt, you're screwed. You don't get an apartment, you don't get anything, But the risk of failure is something that is one of the biggest thing that every entrepreneur has to fight against. And it's one of the biggest excuses that everybody gives for change to happen, transformation to happen. And I tell to people, when you are in your college time, that's the best time. Who cares, you fail or not? You are able to do much of the change, About barriers. We talked about it. There's one thing about this barrier. Why do barriers exist? Who creates them? And what is the intention of that barrier? There is a principle called Peter's principle. Do you know this? The Peter's principle is a very simple statement. Everybody goes from the point of their excellence and competence to a point of their uselessness. So every promotion you get is going from your level of competence to the level of incompetence. So the last promotion you get is the level of the best incompetence that you can have. If you're a good student, people think, oh, you could be a good researcher. If you're a good employee, you can be a good manager. You could be a senior manager. You can be the vice president. You can be the head of the company, Maybe not. Clever people decide not to take that last promotion. It happened to great people. I have been reading about many of the cases. For example, Einstein, when he was called to become the president of Israel, he didn't jump off the boat and said, yes, I will go there. No, he said, no, thank you. Clever people do that because they know that is the last stage where they are totally incompetent. You can't do what you want to do. You won't be able to do what you wanted to do. And that's going to be the biggest bottleneck for you. So barriers is important for you to understand, but the question is, barriers are needed too, because without barrier, you can't create the window of opportunity. You can't put a window without something to hold that window. And it's important to think about barriers from the point of view of where you can create that window of opportunity. And that is going to be one of the biggest added advantage of you as an individual, as you as a company, as you as a country, to think about where are we going to go next. Because if you don't do this, somebody else will do, and then you don't have it. So I wanted to give a hint about what I think about a technology should do. We heard a lot about technology. We heard a lot about innovation, learning. This is yet another metaphor that I always ask myself, what is a good solution to a problem? Imagine that every problem that you face as an individual, or your company faces as a company, or a country faces as a country, as these tablets. Okay? The best solution is the one that can dissolve the problem without precipitating other problems. Right? Most often, we come up with solutions that can contain your problem but gives away another 10 other problems. You have a congestion of road traffic, create more roads. What happens? you bring more traffic, right? You have problem with water, you do this, then you pollute even more water, right? So a solution is an important thing, and that's where the innovation is more important, and that's where the transformation comes from. So imagine that a caterpillar and its complete journey. Status quo is so comforting. It can keep on eating whatever it wants to eat and keep continuing. But then it's not comforting. It's easy for it. But then there is a point where it has to go through the change. And in this part of the change is where uncertainty prevails. And that's where the biggest opportunity is also existing. Now, if you really look into what is there, it's like a soup, caterpillar soup. If you just open it up, that's what it is. And that's where so much of chaos happens, uncertainty happens, doubts will come, naysayers will be there, people will say it won't work for you, it will not go forward, you can't do this, such kind of things. But then that's the part where you have to sustain in order for you to transform. Because as an entrepreneur, as an institution that is entrepreneurial, as a country, as a city that is entrepreneurial, that is a phase where you have to take it forward. If not, you're going to be ruled by somebody else. And then you can keep on saying that, oh, I thought about it, I had this idea, and many people say that. And of course, the real transformation is when you have gone through the whole process. And that's the cost of success that everyone has to do. In the morning, we heard about the Olympic game story. That's a tough path. And of course, that's the process of transformation as well. So at the end of the day, what I wanted to leave you with is the idea of building the skills and at the same time keeping the entire process dependent on how and what you wanted to do as an individual, how and what you wanted to do as a company, as an organization, and as a city. Because without this, you are accepting what the Vaasa, the elephant, was accepting. So the question is, what kind of an elephant are you as an individual? What kind of an elephant are you as a company? What kind of an elephant are you as a city? What are the limitations, what you are accepting? What are the constraints that you are okay with, not okay with? Where is the level of frustration that you are in, and what can lead to the transformation? So with that, I leave you with the question of what is to redefine the possibilities. Thank you.